Welcome back to Pace Immigration, paceimmigration.com, talking with immigration lawyer Andy Semotiuk. Andy, always good to see you. How's it going?
Hi, Sean. Good to see you again.
So today we're talking about how long until I get my visa. We've got to throw this caveat out there that it depends, like anything else in the legal realm and in immigration. It depends. But we're going to go through a few different options that people might be applying for to get into the United States. And we'll talk about, in general, how long it takes to get those things and why there may be some delays, because we're hearing about a lot of delays in the immigration world right now. Let's start off with a kind of an easy one, or maybe not so easy just because it depends on a lot of different variables. But there's a lot of people out there applying to visit the United States. First of all, Andy, who has to apply to visit the United States, and how long in general does it take?
Good questions. Well, first of all, if you're a Canadian, for example, you don't have to apply to the consulate, U.S. consulate, to enter the United States. So long as you have your passport, you can just go into the United States on that basis. Right at the border, they'll let you in. It's true also for other people. For example, people from the European Union, they have a, kind of a pass, so to speak, that enables them to fly in on there's this thing called ESTA that they have to go online and enter some answers to questions.
Right.
But there's no consular visit. They can just get on the plane and fly in on that basis. So these are visa exempt countries. So Canada, the EU, Japan, Australia, and a few others are like that. Other countries require a visa, which means you have to go through the consulate. And that's where the delays are in particular. So if you want to talk about visitor visa, for example, I'm going to say it's going to take a few months. And in some cases, you can't even get to the consulate in even a year. Looking at Canada, for example, suppose you're in Canada, you're a permanent resident, but you don't have citizenship. In that case, you can't go just to the border to go into the United States. Oh, no. You have to go to the consulate to get a visa. And you get the visa in your foreign passport, even though you are a resident of Canada. And to get that visa takes several months, 2, 3, 4 months in Canada at the U.S. consulate.
Let's talk about spousal sponsorship. You deal with this all the time. You're helping people sponsor their spouses into the United States. Generally speaking, right now, how long does it take?
I would say if you got a spousal sponsorship going, meaning a U.S. citizen is sponsoring a spouse from abroad, I would estimate the processing time all inclusive, meaning from the start right away until the spouse arrives in the U.S., is going to be somewhere about 14 to 16 months.
That's a fairly significant wait, isn't it? I mean, some people, that's a long time to not see your spouse.
Indeed, it is. I find it very hard on spouses. I wouldn't care to be away from my spouse for like 16 months. And that depends also on the country. There can be some countries where the waiting time can be much longer than that. This is just like on average. But there's just, so many hurdles to get through. And I've written articles about this. My sense is that you could speed this up quite a bit. You don't have to go through all the processing right off the bat. You could do some of it inside the country once they arrived. But then I don't run the U.S. government. And so unfortunately, maybe fortunately for some people, but, it is what it is, as they say. And the result is 14 to 16 months is my estimate of how long I would tell a client it's going to take for a spouse to get to the United States.
Okay, let's move on. We've got 3 passports. This is kind of not really visas, I suppose, but we're hearing a lot of news, especially in Canada, about mega passport delays. People lining up. They're bringing their lawn chairs at midnight so that they hope they can get in the office at 8 or 9 in the morning and see if they can get a passport. What's going on in the United States?
Same kind of a problem, delays, but not quite. There's 2 aspects to this. In terms of citizenship, there are substantial delays in the United States to get the citizenship. But in terms of passport processing, it's. I had some examples of people who had to travel very quickly abroad. There was one spouse in particular that we were trying to help, who had planned a trip and was, just desperate to get her passport so that she go on that trip. And we are phoning all over the United States trying to book an appointment with a passport office to be able to get the passport out. And we managed to get it out in a couple of weeks, a few weeks. But I think we can, pretty well anticipate there'll be, in most cases, a month and a half, something like that to get a passport out.
For green cards or permanent resident card, but colloquially called green cards, the process of that, is that also delayed? How long does that take for someone to get their green card?
It can be years. It can be like, in some instances, like a brother sponsoring let's say you're a U.S. citizen and you're wanting to sponsor your brother abroad. That can be, if you're Indian, for example, you mentioned Indian, it can take 10, 12 years to get a green card for a brother sponsoring a brother abroad, a U.S. citizen brother sponsoring a brother from India. So it very much depends on the category. We talked about spouses as one category. If you're a spouse of a green card holder, but not a U.S. citizen, we're looking at probably 3-4 years for you to be able to bring your spouse over, meaning you as a permanent resident are sponsoring your spouse from abroad to come in to get permanent residence also, 3-4 years. Employment-based green cards, depending on the category, can take maybe a year and a half, or they can take like 5-6 years. For example, in the case of labor certification green cards, where the employer has to certify or get a job that he wants to or she wants to offer to a foreign worker certified by the Department of Labor before they apply for the green card process. That can take several years, like 3-4 years. So it depends on what kind of green card you're applying for.
It's a long process, eh? Green cards.
Yeah.
I didn't know just how long until I started talking to you about it, but it's a life-changing thing, and it certainly takes feels like a lifetime to get into it. Yeah.
Let's take a moment just to figure out, why is this taking so long?
Sure.
Every year, the U.S. Congress sets the total amount of people who can immigrate to the United States. Like, it's usually around about 1.25 million people from all over the world is how many they want to allow to immigrate to the United States. And then with that cap, they allocate the numbers according to categories, for example, workers, refugees, family-based, and so on. And they also allocate that total amount according to countries. And no country can get more than 7% of all the green cards that will be available in any year. And so that 7% is divided up. Let's say take China. It can have 7% of all the green cards issued in a given year. So they have to divide those up into the various categories: worker, EB5, refugee, etc. So that's why very soon what happens is there's a buildup of a backlog, because this year 7% is eaten up just like that, but there's still people in the process waiting for their green cards. So they are pushed back into the backlog, and this backlog is building over time. And these people have to wait all those years before they get to the front of the line and they can come into the United States.
And the upshot of that is, don't let it expire. Make sure you're staying current with your paperwork, for sure.
Yeah. One last thing about green cards is, green cards expire as well. So, for example, if you leave the country and you're outside the country for more than 6 months, you may be blocked from returning to the country because the officer at the port of entry may say, Oh, wait a minute. You abandoned your permanent residence. You left. You've been out for more than 6 months, which is kind of a litmus test that they use to determine whether maybe you have abandoned your intent to live in the United States permanently. So you got
Sure.
to be very careful about not losing your green card as well.
Okay. E2 visa, we're getting kind of into the more the investor type category. Give a brief update on the E2 and where it stands in terms of how long until I can get it.
Okay. E2, depending on what country you're from, again,
Yeah.
can be shorter or longer. The best offices, the best consulates in the world, US consulates in the world, are taking about 8 to 12 months. An example is the Toronto US consulate for people from Canada applying for an E2 visa. Often we have, for example, an investor that buys a hotel and wants to go and manage and run the hotel. It's going to take about 8 to 12 months from Canada, assuming that's a Canadian citizen applying for an E2 visa, to go down to run his or her hotel. That's Canada, one of the best in the world. There are consulates that they're not even open for E2 visas because they're so backlogged. So it depends, but I'm going to say count on at least probably a year and probably more depending on where you are.
Okay. And the next one we'll talk about the EB5. The EB5 is kind of a funny one. Maybe provide an update on where that stands, because I know there was things trying to meander its way through Congress to do with the EB5 as well.
Right. Well, the legislation has changed and a new act has come into being. And under this new legislation, the amount required is $800,000 for regional center projects in high unemployment areas and $1,050,000 for projects in sort of more prosperous areas. So the regional center aspect of the EB5 program, which is by far the most popular, over 90% of people apply under that program. To get the visa, that is to say the immigrant visa, and in this case, a conditional green card to start, in most instances is going to take about 2.5 years processing time. If you're an applicant from China, Vietnam, or India, it's much longer. It can be, 3, 4, 5 years, or even longer for an EB5 green card.
When you talk about the ones that take the shorter amount of time, are we talking about European Union, Canada, the UK, that kind of thing?
Yes, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Again, but you may think, well, is this racist? What's going on here? It goes back to that congressional cap on everybody's capacity to come to the United States, divided up by country. So in the case of China or India or Vietnam, there's a tremendous number of people who want to come through. But in the case of the EB5 program, they only allow 10,000 visas, immigrant green card visas per year worldwide. And that's divided up. So a place like China may only have like 600 or so visas in a year, whereas the number of people who really want to come to the United States could be like thousands in a year. So there's the backlog again. And so now you're waiting in that backlog to get up to the front so you can come.
Wow. A lot of people banging on the door to get in, and just not enough visas to go around, it would seem.
Yeah.
And couple that with, as you're saying, the staffing shortages and then the problems, the after echo of COVID, it all equals delays.
Yes. And it's not just the United States. This is a worldwide issue. Canada's got the same kind of concerns, the same backlogs and
It
things.
sure does. Yeah.
So, the discussions that have gone on at various conferences and so on make me think that this is going to be with us for many years. It's going to take a long time, several years to kind of speed up back to normal.
Okay, well, thanks for the update, Andy. If anybody's out there watching the video that's interested in getting a visa to come to the United States, Andy Semotiuk is the person to help you do that. You can reach him at asemotiuk@pacelawfirm.com. Andy, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Sean.